This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
I heard you've been looking for me, but you look for trouble. You're gonna see that your words are dangerous. Your talk is cheap. So now I'm standing here. You tell yourself you know what to do when you realize that I am coming for you. Then you'll change your mind and run like a child when you see me standing here. Now I'm standing here. Don't question my heart. Don't question the fire that burns inside.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another episode of Extreme Resurrection. I'm your host, James Gruenberg. Alongside me always is my partner in crime, Steve Riddle. Steve, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back and got some interesting show tonight because I believe for the first time since I've started doing this, our two shows sandwich a pay-per-view. Usually we do, the two shows going into the pay-per-view, but here we actually have the pay-per-view in between the two shows. So kind of an interesting route going that we're going to be taking here tonight.
Yeah, indeed. But lots of things are happening leading up to Judgment Day as well. We know that the New Breed's Elijah Burke is going to take on CM Punk in a one-on-one match at Judgment Day. And again, it is a 3-on-1 handicap match for the ECW title between Bobby Lashley, Shane McMahon, Umaga, and the ECW champion, Mr. McMahon. So Judgment Day is looking up and up for the ECW side of things. They're getting recognition on the pay-per-views. They usually just feature the Raw and SmackDown superstars here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if ECW does get involved, it's only for like the title and whoever the champion is. So it's good to see Punk and Burke get a good showcase. Yep.
So before we get into ECW here tonight, we have a recap of Monday Night Raw, and it's Bobby Lashley versus Coach. And then, so that's a squash match where Bobby Lashley just dominates Coach. And then Bobby chases Umaga, Shane, and Mr. McMahon into the back and everything. And he chases them up, and then out of nowhere, Mr. McMahon hits Bobby with the ECW title in the parking lot. So it looks like the McMahons got one up on Bobby Lashley going into Judgment Day here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vince getting that one last shot in on Lashley, kind of putting that final period on it before we get into the pay-per-view.
Yep. And so now we have Mr. McMahon. He's on satellite here. He announces the main event tonight is going to be Bobby Lashley versus all three remaining members of the New Breed. And so we're in for hopefully a good matchup between the New Breed and Bobby Lashley here, but we'll see what happens. Will Elijah Burke be able to get some shots in, or is Bobby Lashley just going to squash them as he goes into Judgment Day here?
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly enough, we kick off, by the way, we're live in Baltimore here tonight. It's May 15th, 2007 for ECW. We kick off with Rob Van Dam versus Snitsky. So after months of just squashing jobbers and making his way up to the main roster of card here, because, the roster of ECW is very small and limited here, but I think we finally got what we really wanted to see, and that is Snitsky taking on a main player in ECW. So what better way than to have Rob Van Dam versus Snitsky here? What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, you figured it was finally time for Snitsky to move into something a little more, meatier and to get some big names against, to face off with to see if he's actually, you know, ready to kind of take that next step and be a potential, top heel for that brand.
Yep. So what I have here is Snitsky throws RVD, a side slam by Snitsky. Snitsky is beating up on Rob Van Dam throughout this whole match, really. A vertical suplex. So it looks like, Snitsky is really on the up and up here. And like RVD is like struggling to get some shots into Snitsky. So they're doing a great job as like Snitsky being this big bad monster here. I have a heel kick to Snitsky, a windmill kick by RVD. RVD misses the Rolling Thunder. Snitsky misses the boot. Huge clothesline to RVD. But then it abruptly comes to a halt because Snitsky ends up getting disqualified by hitting RVD with the chair. And there's no clear winner here. I mean, I guess they're trying to, I don't know why they're trying to protect Snitsky here. But, Snitsky gets disqualified and he hits RVD with the chair. So there's some brutal chair shots as well. For this matchup, I went 2 stars, Steve. I thought it was really good how they were presenting Snitsky as this big bad monster who like beat up RVD throughout the match. And it looked like RVD was going to get this like really huge comeback here. A really good showing by both men. But again, it's kind of tainted by a disqualification finish.
Yeah, I went 2 stars as well. Pretty basic stuff here. Snitsky looked good with his power offense. RVD sold well for him, and then RVD got a good little spirited comeback there. And that chair shot he took there was nasty. It like cracked him, like Snitsky like cracked him right in the back of his head with that chair. It's like RVD barely got his hands up to protect himself. The DQ finish kind of puzzled me. I don't know if they were, like you said, if it was just trying to protect Snitsky with him not getting pinned, but they didn't want RVD to lose either. Unless they, thought maybe this would continue on through the next week or so, before we get something definitive. So it was a little bit of a puzzling finish. Didn't really do much for either guy, really, in my opinion.
No, not really, but a good showing by both to get the crowd going here for ECW. It looks like a great matchup to kick it off with, considering what the main event is too. So it's like you put it on an action class, kickoff match here between RVD and a big heel and Snitsky, and then you go with the main event of everyone's favorite Bobby Lashley versus the heels of the New Breed. So it makes sense on where to put this matchup here.
Definitely.
And now we get CM Punk versus, again, I think this might be like the 3rd to 4th time we're seeing him. But again, you only have so much left on the so much small crowdedness on the ECW roster that you can only bring out a certain amount of superstars. We have CM Punk versus Steven Richards. Kicks to Steve. CM Punk starts to kick Stevie. Knees to Punk's ribs. Stevie then just starts going after Punk's ribs because they're heavily bandaged, and Steven Richards is really taking a lot of advantages against CM Punk's ribs here. A neck breaker by Punk. Stevie counters a bulldog. Punk counters a tornado DDT for DDT, and then he turns that into the GTS. So CM Punk wins with the pinfall. For this one, Steve, I went 1.5 stars. I really actually liked Steven Richards showing, taking advantage of the ribs here and, try to get that pin against Punk. So I went 1.5 stars.
Yeah, I went 2 stars again, also for this match. So this is actually the 3rd time in the last 7 weeks that these two have fought each other. So again, like you said, that's just the lack of depth on the ECW. That's why we're getting this is repetitiveness at times. But Punk with the selling the pounce he took last week. He's got, like you said, the ribs taped up, and Stevie with a good game plan going after them. but Punk, held strong, and I actually liked that little that counter of the tornado DDT into the GTS. I thought that was a good series there, and it gives Punk a good strong win going into the pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. So now we have the New Breed. New Breed is backstage. Marcus Corvan is ready for Lashley. He says he will help the New Breed to victory and will beat CM Punk at Judgment Day. So really strong confidence here, pumping up the New Breed, or what's left of the New Breed of Elijah Burke's words. And you can see Corvan is ready to take on Lashley. And also, Striker's just looking in the background. He looks like he's a little bit scared to do this, but he's like, okay, I'm going to follow Elijah here.
Yeah, good promo here. And yes, Striker's pretty much, become like the bastard stepchild of the group, because every time he tries to talk, Burke cuts him off, and he's basically like, you've been, the reason we've lost some big matches. So it's, you got to get your act together. So, some interesting, again, kind of more potential teasing of further dissension within the group.
Yeah. And, just like good promo. And then, he's always like putting down, he's always putting down Striker. And he's like, it's your fault. You lost the Major Brothers. You have to prove yourself here tonight. And Striker's like, all right, I will. Like, you see, like, Striker's like a sad puppy dog, like, I didn't mean to. Yep. So now we have Kevin Thorne and Ariel versus Nunzio. Punches and kicks by Thorne. Thorne power slams Nunzio. Nunzio gets out of the sleeper. Drop kick to Thorne's face. The dark kiss by Thorne for the win. I went a star here. I thought it was good. Good trying to show for Nunzio as well, trying to fight. But essentially, it does become a squash where Kevin Thorne is just dominating Nunzio, and he gets the win with the dark kiss. So I want a star here, Steve.
Yeah, I want a star as well. So here's an interesting little note. Thorne was actually originally supposed to face Sabu on the show, but reportedly Sabu refused to lose because they wanted him to lose, and he refused to do so. So as a result, he actually got fired for that. So
Wow.
Sabu's run has come to an end. Just under a year since he was at One Night Stand 06, and now this is pretty much it. This is it for him. So we are not going to see him any more going forward.
What's funny is on the Place to Be Network also the Highway to the Impact Zone, they are actually finishing up Sabu's run in TNA from when he makes the jump to ECW for the One Night Stand pay-per-view, and ECW on Sci-Fi as well.
But very fitting there. But yeah, that's it for him. And I think he goes back to TNA briefly, and then just kind of just does some random stuff here and there. Doesn't really make didn't make another major appearance at any of the big companies until actually very recently. He made that really just random appearance at Double or Nothing with AEW as the enforcer of the Jericho Cole unsanctioned match, which I was there live for, and it was weird. I'll say that.
So let's recap a little bit. Since we do fly by these shows here, let's recap a little bit. Sabu kind of got not the raw end of the deal, but he was a reliability, a liability issue. He's a liability issue. When it came to jumping, we've seen from time to time, he was always botching things, and it got to the point where he couldn't even get into the ECW Extreme Elimination Chamber because I feel that Mr. McMahon could not trust him, or WWE could not trust him to go through this match, coordinate this matchup here. So they need someone who's more of a veteran with following like roll call as well, because ECW just seemed like it was off the charts, like they didn't really have like roll call and like coordinate everything, it just seemed like, hey, whoever wins and let's fight to the death, basically, someone's got to win, right? And he just botched a lot of things, he has that one matchup against Big Show at SummerSlam, and it looked like that was brutal, and then he just kind of falls off the wagon a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not like they didn't try with him. I mean, like you said, they gave him the big spot against Big Show at SummerSlam. He was a key player at Survivor Series on John Cena's team. He got got a little shine in the Royal Rumble. He got a WrestleMania spot, which not a lot of guys can say. They even put the Sheik in the Hall of Fame. So they gave him plenty of chances. But I think by this point, I think he got to the point where he just had enough and wanted out. I mean, we think back to that one episode of ECW where he had forgotten his gear and he had to borrow Davari's tights. So, and I think, this just, refusing to put Thorne over was, obviously the final straw for it. But
I think it was his way out, like if he says no, they're definitely going to I think in a way it was like a mutual parting where it's like, if I say no, they're definitely going to kick me out. And I'm kind of glad that they are, Yeah,
it could have been, but yeah, I mean, his year was definitely full. I mean, he had some good moments, but he was definitely full of ups and downs. So,
yep.
But he can at least say he got I'm sure he got some pretty good paydays out of it. So he did make out some good for it. But in terms of the match itself, pretty much just a straight squash. Nunzio gets a few shots in, but Thorne pretty much destroys them and finishes them off in less than 4 minutes. So just another kind of a squash win here. They're kind of now doing for kind of trying to do for Thorne what they were doing for Snitsky earlier, giving them these a couple of squash wins just to kind of reestablish himself as a solo guy.
Yep. So then, but also, I think Sabu's best match, would probably either the WrestleMania 23 match or that ECW Extreme Rules match where it was the 4-on-4, I saw him and RVD doing some really insane moves here too. And it looks like they are trying to get a little bit of a push here for Kevin Thorne on the heel side here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So now we have Bobby Lashley. He's giving a little promo here. He says Lashley will finally get his hands on Mr. McMahon Sunday at Judgment Day, and he is going to destroy the new breed. I like these short promos here because that Lashley is still kind of green with saying things, but his tough words, he means business, but he really cannot say a lot here. He doesn't need to because it's I'm just going to pound through everybody and I'm going to get what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now we have the new breed versus Bobby Lashley in a 3-on-1 handicap match. Elijah Burke starts off. Standing suplex to Elijah. Shoulder block to Corvan. Striker gets knocked down to the outside. Corvan hits the pounce on Lashley to the outside. And this pounce here, Steve, looked a little botched. Here, it looked like Lashley sort of stalled a little bit, and then Corvan had to reset himself to get the pounce in line, and then they do the pounce. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah. It did look very awkward. I think Lashley may have because Lashley's goal was to try to go over the top rope, but I think he mistimed it a bit. So that's why Corvan had to kind of compensate a bit, and it definitely looked a bit. It definitely looked a bit off, which sucks because that's a big moment for Corvan to get his finisher basically on the number one face of ECW. So I felt kind of bad for him that it got got screwed up like it did.
Yeah, it looked like Lashley was a little bit offline with how Corvan was pointing. So I feel like he just had to like reset. Like the way I looked at it, it was like, oh, I'm not in line with it. So now we got to like reset the thing over, and it looked just bad, and it sucks, but is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So now we have a scoop slam by Corvan, a backdrop to Lashley by Corvan, belly to belly suplex to Burke, and then Matt Striker gets speared for the win. So Striker again gets pinned here, and you can see that Elijah Burke is not happy. Like he's like, no, Corvan, leave him. Like he doesn't deserve our help, and like Elijah is always blaming everything on Striker here. Like you said, the bastard stepchild, like it's all your fault. And so for this matchup, I actually went a star and 3/4. I did like it. The new breed did show some heel like leverage, trying to help Mr. McMahon here by beating down Lashley before Judgment Day, and the power of Corvan and Burke. Striker again, which is left to be the fall guy here, so they could enhance the storyline of the new breed, particularly maybe falling apart with Burke and Striker here.
Yeah, I went 2 1/4. I thought it was a fine handicap match. I thought that even though the pounce got kind of screwed up, I did think Corvan looked pretty good against Lashley. He got some good moves in on him, as did Burke. No shock that Lashley ended up winning because he had to get some momentum going into the pay-per-view. And if any guy was going to take the pin, it was going to be Striker. You obviously didn't want Burke to job right before his big match, and they obviously didn't want to have Corvan job because it seems like maybe they want to set him and Lashley up for something down the line. But yeah, just a solid way to kind of close out the show. Again, like I said, give Lashley a little momentum and continue this little, again, dissension within the new breed as Striker's becoming more and more of the odd man out.
Yep. So it does seem like going into Judgment Day, and we're going to get into it as we kick off the next episode with the ECW for May 22nd. But it does seem like a lot of start and stops, more of like starts for people. As we said, like Kevin Thorne looks like he's getting a little bit of a push, like he's dominating guys. And then you have Corvan, where like he's not getting pinned, but like he has this great pounce and like this great look of physique here. And Elijah Burke as well, the running knee and everything. He's beating up some of the ECW originals, and he's gotten some pins over them. And then you have Snitsky as well. They're still keeping Snitsky strong by having him get DQ'd instead of getting pinned. But again, he didn't want to pin RVD. So it's like, which one of these 4 heels is going to take the first pin, and like lose their dominating wins that they've been getting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've definitely they've done well building up these 4 guys. I mean, obviously, we'll see. Obviously, the only thing I can see is that obviously Burke's got the thing with Punk, so we'll see how that ends up going. But yeah, I mean, Thorne, Snitsky, and Corvan are all kind of building up a little bit of momentum. This is kind of where having Vince as the ECW champion kind of really hurts, because since with him as the champion and him, Lashley chasing him, you've got these other good heels on the brand that kind of really have just they're spinning their wheels at this point. They're waiting to see when, because eventually Lashley's going to get the belt back at some point, and it's just going to be a matter of when they do it and which of these guys is going to be the first one to kind of take that next step and be the first big challenger for him.
Yep. So it's all about when does Lashley, like you said, Steve, when does Lashley get the belt back, and who's going to be the first challenger. So, Steve, before we get into the ECW show here and the recap of Judgment Day, because like you said, we're sandwiched between we had a show, now we have the pay-per-view, and then we have this show. During the during the SmackDown Baltimore and ECW, there were the news is that Ariel, this was Ariel's last show with Kevin Thorne as she got released as well. She does make the appearance on ECW with Kevin Thorne versus Nunzio, but that is actually it for her as well. So not only did Sabu get fired, Ariel got let go after the show here. There were two rumors. I believe this one more, that Vince McMahon just did not understand the goth vampire look, and that this was more of a Paul Heyman idea, and Paul really sold Vince on the Kevin Thorne and Ariel idea, like the guy who played Mordecai and everything, that, oh, this guy's like new goth, and he's got like this hot girl, coming up in the ranks, and I think we could put them together. And Vince went for it. Now that Paul's gone, and ECW's back in Vince McMahon's hands, how far do you go with Kevin Thorne and Ariel? If Ariel can't even get in the ring and wrestle, but again, there's no divas on ECW and stuff, and the way out, I think, is weird. But she had an altercation with Batista at the SmackDown ECW taping where Batista was kind of being a jerk. And instead of ignoring Batista's antics, Ariel sort of went off on him in front of WWE officials as well. And they looked at it as why is Ariel creating a scene? This is not good. It's not a good look for us. And they released her for that reason of creating a scene between her and Batista. I don't know if you ever heard that story, but I read it because remember we were talking about if Kevin Thorne quit the New Breed, we thought that Kevin Thorne was getting the axe, but it turns out Ariel got the axe instead.
Yeah, I don't recall hearing much about that. I think I know apparently she did an interview in 2013. That's when she pretty much flat out blames her release on that on the confrontation with Batista. Again, I don't know if it's legit or not. It just felt kind of weird that that all of a sudden that they let her go out of the blue. I mean, it was actually it was on the 18th, that 3 days after the taping that they let her go. Yeah, it just seems kind of weird. And now you wonder, what does this mean for Thorne? Because, I mean, honestly, she was one of the few things about him that was interesting. And now that she's gone, you just got this weird vampire guy just kind of going around everywhere. So it's what's going to happen with him now?
Yeah. And then, they played off as they broke up and Ariel just left, so that's basically it for Ariel, or I don't even know if her real name is Shelly Martinez. I think it is. So, that's the end of her in WWE ECW and the World Wrestling Entertainment as well. So 2 losses for ECW here.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have ECW from May 22nd. We're in Des Moines, Iowa. We have the recap of Judgment Day. CM Punk defeated Elijah Burke. And in the 3-on-1 handicap match, Bobby Lashley does defeat Umaga, Mr. McMahon, and Shane McMahon to become the ECW champion. However, Steve, he does not pin Mr. McMahon. So Mr. McMahon gets on the microphone and says, you didn't pin Mr. McMahon one-on-one, so you do not get the ECW title. Since you did not pin Mr. McMahon, you pinned Umaga, you don't get the title back. You won the match, but you're not the champion. So you're a winner. So even though Lashley wins, Mr. McMahon is still the ECW champion.
Yeah, and I remember that was a big, that was a big deflating moment because that match only goes not even two. I think it only goes a minute 15, and Lashley pretty much destroys them, and like you said, gets the win, and you think he's finally he's got the belt back, but then like you said, Vince pulls the rug out from under and says that you got to beat me to become the champion. So that pretty much confirmed that this thing was going to go on a little bit longer. And in regards to Punk and Burke, that's a much better match than I think a lot of people remember. It's a they actually got the most of all the matches on that show. They got the most time at 17 minutes. So obviously, they put a lot of trust in those guys, and they definitely delivered. So kudos to the two of them for going out there and putting on a really, really good match.
Yep. So hopefully we resolve this Mr. McMahon Lashley feud soon, so we can get back to the ECW superstars and the alumni of ECW having title matches instead of Mr. McMahon and his cronies here.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're in Des Moines, Iowa. We kick off. It is now Snitsky versus Tommy Dreamer. So another ECW original versus Snitsky. So we'll see how Tommy goes against Snitsky here. Punches to Snitsky by Tommy. Snitsky throws Tommy to the outside. Snitsky throws Tommy into the ring post. Shoulder first. Snitsky missed the leg drop. DDT by Tommy Dreamer. Huge clothesline by Snitsky. And a big boot by Snitsky for the win. I went a star here, Steve. I tried going a star and a quarter, but it's like if I read this now, I'm like, this is a star because like it's basically a squash. You give Tommy some offense when then the DDT, but then again, he just becomes a goner with the huge clothesline, the big boot for the win on Snitsky. So I went a star.
Yeah, I actually gave it the extra star. I gave it the extra quarter and went star and a quarter. So we've now had 3 straight weeks of Snitsky facing the originals because he fought Sandman on the 8th, RVD last week, and Dreamer here, and he's basically two out of the 3 he won clean. So you can tell who's definitely on the pecking order of the originals. Yeah, again, basic stuff here. Tommy did show a little good fire and got a did get off the DDT, which, one of the first times Snitsky has gotten hit with a finisher, but kicked out of it. And then he, ends up winning. But then he then tries to attack Dreamer afterwards with a chair, but RVD makes the save with the Van Daminator off the top. So again, maybe continuing something with RVD and Snitsky from the previous week.
Yeah, that's what I had as well, that Snitsky was trying to finish off Tommy, and then RVD hits the Snitsky with the Van Daminator with the chair. So really good babyface hero for Rob Van Dam to help his buddy Tommy out before Tommy became mush to Snitsky here. So let's see what we get on their next recording and our next between our next 2 episodes here as well. Because actually, Steve, I believe we only have the next 2 episodes, and then we are actually at One Night Stand. So we're kind of flying by between pay-per-views here as well.
Yeah, we're gonna hit it. Yeah, we got a stretch here of what feels like a pay-per-view, like every other 3 weeks. So it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks, that's for sure.
Yep. So then we get a recap of the ECW title match, like I said, between Lashley and the McMahons and Umaga. And like I said, he beats Umaga, but Mr. McMahon says, you didn't pin me, and I'm the champion, so you don't get the title. You win the match, but you don't get the title, and it's heavily booed as well. So we'll see where that goes as well, because we have a little bit of a recap of Monday Night Raw. But before we get to that, we have Kevin Thorne on his own. That's right. Ariel is no more. It's Kevin Thorne on his own versus Wyatt Laird. A flapjack and a huge clothesline by Thorne. Wyatt tries to fight back, but is given the dark kiss by Thorne for the win. This is a half a star, basically. It's a squash, but again, they're trying to see that Thorne is this really tough bad guy here as well, with all this darkness on him. So it feels like they're trying to make him like a dark angel Undertaker here,
Yeah, I went half star as well. My first thought when I saw that the jobber Wyatt Lara, and I saw that name, all I could think about was our good friends over at PTB NXT. That sounds like one of those like random names, one of the names you would get from the random name generator for like when they do like their gimmicks at the beginning of each episode. I could see like a Wyatt Lara popping up for one of them. So
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. But yeah, nothing much here. Just again, another dominant win for Thorne. Again, now that he's no longer got Ariel, we'll see how much he how relevant he can stay without the one thing that kept him interesting.
Uh-huh. Yep. So now we have Elijah Burke and Marcus Corban. They're talking about their match versus Punk and RVD tonight. So it's going to be Punk and RVD versus Elijah Burke and Marcus Corban. And then Burke is mad at Stryker, says there will be, like problems if he doesn't win versus the Major Brothers here tonight because he's facing a Major Brother. And sort of like Burke put the blame on Stryker that he lost to CM Punk as well. So, again, Burke is just attacking Stryker here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just more like, Stryker's got to prove himself. And I do like how Burke basically said it was because of Stryker's recent losses that he lost his concentration, and that's what cost him the win against Punk. So kind of trying to save some face there as to why he got beat. So, it's, again, just kind of basic stuff here.
So now we have Matt Stryker versus Brett Major. Hip toss and shoulder knockdown by Brett. Belly to back suplex by Stryker. Clothesline by Stryker. A neck breaker to Stryker. Brett tries to get a roll up on Stryker, but then Stryker hits 2 golden rules to Brett for the win. For this match, Steve, I went 1.5 stars. I really liked how they were giving, Brett Major here a lot of time to get some offense in. And, just like the finish, where it's like, oh, Stryker might lose, but then, he ends up getting these 2 golden rules in for the win. So I went 1.5 stars. I thought it was good showing by both guys. Stryker really pulled some weight here in his match. Not something you would see from Stryker, nor would I think they were at the time getting a jobber some ring time here. You would think that it would be like just a squash for Stryker's revenge, but it looked like it was a little bit of a surprise as well. So I went 1.5 stars.
Yeah, I went 1.5 stars too. Again, pretty good, decent little stuff here. Stryker obviously coming out with a lot of aggression because he knows he's got to prove himself. And I thought Brett looked, decent for what he did. He got some good moves in. And again, you think, they're going to pull the upset. He's going to pull the upset and beat Stryker, but then Stryker finishes him off fairly easily. So he kind of, keeps himself out of the doghouse for a little bit in the eyes of Burke. So, good, decent little win there for Stryker. And again, it feels like that shock win the Majors had earlier in the month is now feeling miles away because the one lost to Burke a few weeks ago, and now Brett loses here. So we'll see if the Majors, if they're now just going to kind of go back into the role of being jobbers, or if they're actually going to kind of turn it around and get another win.
Yep. So, let's see what happens with our main event. But like I said before, we have a recap of Monday Night Raw, and Lashley runs a gauntlet, and if he wins this whole gauntlet, if he runs the gauntlet, he gets Mr. McMahon one-on-one at One Night Stand. So Lashley overcomes everyone, and he wins to get a matchup versus Mr. McMahon at One Night Stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, just Vince putting all the odds against him and Lashley overcoming them. And, I mean, he had to beat Chris Masters, Viscera, Umaga, and then Shane at the end. So they really, again, Vince trying to stack the deck, but Lashley pulling it out. So now that he's got Vince one-on-one, maybe this will finally be the time where he finally gets the belt back.
Yep. So now we have our main event is Rob Van Dam and CM Punk versus Marcus Corvan and Elijah Burke. RVD and Corvan start off. Shoulder tackle by Corvan to RVD. Split-legged moonsault to Corvan. Springboard clothesline by Punk to Burke. Burke and Corvan are working on RVD. Corvan is working on RVD's knee. RVD tries to cover Burke, but his feet are on the ropes. Inseguri to Burke, tag to Punk. Knee lift and bulldog by Punk. RVD misses a crossbody. A pounce to Punk. Burke and Corvan get disqualified, and then a pounce to RVD. So they get Corvan gets disqualified because he is not listening to the referee, and he didn't get out of the ring. So it's sort of a confusion here as well. And then a pounce to RVD. So for this, I went 1 star and 3/4 because we have no clear winner. And it looks like they were trying to protect Corvan and Burke here. But brutal pounces by Corvan to both Punk and RVD here.
Yeah, I went actually 2 3/4. I was really getting into it, but the finish did kind of hurt it a bit for me. But I thought both teams had some really good chemistry. Corvan and Burke, showing, kind of working well together as a team. And then, like you said, yeah, the ending kind of confusing. Corvan's not the legal man. He basically gets the team DQ, but he still looks strong. But he's the one that gets the pounces off on both Punk and RVD. So again, really making Corvan look real strong here. And like I've been saying, it seems like if we were talking about like all these heels, but it seems like just based on what we're seeing that it seems like Corvan's the first guy that might be the one to potentially get a shot at Lashley if he does win the title back from Vince at One Night Stand. So they're definitely they've been doing a really good job here of making Corvan look really strong.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Well, that's actually going to do it for our show here. So like we said, Steve, a lot of things are happening, as we progress to One Night Stand. And it looks like a lot of things going to be turning a little bit for some of the ECW originals here as well as we get heading into One Night Stand. But very good showing by the New Breed and Lashley as well as like we said, Lashley got the win versus the New Breed going into Judgment Day, and now Lashley's going to face Mr. McMahon one-on-one, and a very good showing that the New Breed is not one to mess with. At least Marcus Corvan isn't, as they go into the One Night Stand field as well, and what's going to happen with the New Breed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So that's going to do it for our shows here. But before we go, Steve, do you have anything that you want to direct the listeners to?
You can usually find me over on the PTB Pop Experience with the regular shows I have there. Pop Goes to Classics, Making Mount Rushmore, and Video Jukebox Song of the Day. Still going very strong. Also, I've occasionally made appearances over on the North-South Connection, either as part of the Premium Live Event previews with Ryan Gray. I've also made a few appearances on No Holds Barred for their drafts, so be sure to check those out on both the in the pod form and also on YouTube, the North-South Connection YouTube channels. If you haven't subscribed to that, please do so. Those guys do a really great job over there with those shows. And also, I'm also on the PTP Facebook group. Lots of good stuff over there. And I will also just tease right now, keep your eyes open on the Facebook group because we will have information regarding our next tournament, which will be kicking off this coming in the weeks to come. So just keep an eye out for that.
Oh, I cannot wait for those tournaments. I love them, just like the voting. It's like, are the new polls open? I always enjoyed that as well. As for me, you can find me on the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, with this show and also the Nation Invasion. Recently, the episode just dropped. I did a special watch along with Keith Langston about King of the Ring 2001 as we continued the coverage of the Invasion era. You know, we're getting a turnaround here, and King of the Ring was a very good stepping point for the WCW superstars and who was coming over. Not to mention that brutal street fight, the brutal street fight with Shane McMahon and Kurt Angle that basically stole the show. But you know, pay-per-view is not without consequences, as there were a lot of injuries in that pay-per-view between the last two matches. And so you can listen to that one. And then as this show is going to drop too, a week later after this show drops, me and Rocco Martone are going to cover, you know, the Monday Night Raw and SmackDown from both Madison Square Garden after King of the Ring 2001. So be on the lookout for that as well as we continue to march through this Invasion era. And on Beverly Hills 90210 So, I was just a guest on that show with Justin and Tim as we recorded season 2, episode 17, Chucky's Back. So that will be later in that will drop later in June, where Steve you know, finds out some important news about where he comes from and his family as he battles a rival at West Beverly High. So we'll see how that goes as well. So I'm looking forward to when that drops as well. Well, that's going to do it from us here on Extreme Resurrection. I'm James Gruenberg. He's Steve Riddle, and we will see you next time. Stay extreme, everyone.